Hi, my name is Udi Kumar and welcome back to Udi History. China is a world economic giant and you might be surprised to learn that it's been that way for most of its history. And of course you know that people, or civilizations in this case, that become super powerful have a tendency to act like they don't really need people or really anyone else. And today we're going to talk about the one time China did that and it became its downfall. Now we're also going to be looking at a very famous primary source from the Qianlong Emperor. That's right, we're talking about the Opium Wars. So leading up to the 18th century, China had adopted isolationist policies, primarily in terms of economic isolation. And for years, Europe had wanted to open up trade relations with China because, as I said, it was the world economic giant at the time. China had allowed Europeans to trade at the port of Canton and for the Portuguese also at the port of Macau, but otherwise trade was pretty cut off. Into this comes Britain, and of course it is Britain. Britain was unsatisfied with the situation because they had always been unsatisfied with everything, and they wanted to get a one-up over the other European nations that were trading in the spice trade, and so they sent in 1793 an ambassador to China named George Macartney. George Macartney's mission was to speak with the Qing Emperor at the time, and his mission is often known as the Macartney Mission or the Macartney Embassy. Of course, China refused these requests to open up trade relations with the British for far more concrete reasons than Macartney's short-sighted refusal to, kowtow to the emperor. A part of the Qianlong Emperor's famous response to Macartney is, quote, "Hitherto, all European nations, including your own country's barbarian merchants, have carried on their trade with our celestial empire at Canton. Such has been the procedure for many years, although our celestial empire possesses all things in prolific abundance and lacks no product within its borders. There was therefore no need to import the manufactures of outside barbarians in exchange for our own produce. But as the tea, silk, and porcelain which the celestial empire produces are absolute necessities to European nations and to yourselves, we have permitted as a signal mark of our favor that foreign hongs should be established at Canton, so your wants might be supplied and your country thus participate in our beneficence." And of course, if you want to read the whole thing, link in the doobly-doo. However, the British soon found something that Chinese people, but let's be honest, really anyone would buy: drugs, specifically opium. Thus began the illegal and infamous opium trade. If you want to play a game about the opium trade on congregate.com, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo for that as well. China quickly found out that British and soon other European companies were illegally smuggling opium into their borders. They also realized that this drug smuggling thing was becoming a serious problem as drug addiction started spreading all throughout China. China complained about this to the British government, but they did really little to help out. When peaceful means failed, Chinese officials confiscated and destroyed 20,000 chests of opium, or about 1,400 tons, in March of 1839. This led to a rapid increase in hostilities until in November of 1839, the British fleet smashed the Chinese blockade at the Pearl River. The war ended with the capture of the city of Nanking and the subsequent Treaty of Nanking. The First Opium War had lasted from 1839 to 1842. The Treaty of Nanking was the first in a series of unequal treaties between the British and China, in which the British gained extraterritorial rights in many port cities and had Hong Kong ceded to them. The Second Opium War from 1856 through 1860 is less important than the first one, but it is worth mentioning. It mainly resulted from the fact that Britain was looking for an excuse to renew hostilities in order to gain more extraterritorial and trading rights in China. And also the French joined in, because why not? The Second Opium War also resulted in unequal treaties between the British and China, and over the next half a century, many European nations would create their own unequal treaties with China in order to get trading rights there. All of these unequal treaties resulted in the destabilization of the Qing dynasty because it had very little control over its own port, making way for the Republican government that would take over after the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912. Today you learned about Britain's 18th and 19th century desires to open up their trade relations even more with China. You also learned about the illegal opium trade and the subsequent opium wars and the unequal treaties that resulted from them. Thanks for watching this episode of Udi History. They do take a lot of work, and I love that there are people out there that can enjoy this kind of work. Now, go out there and make history. Just don't do it by dealing drugs.